my assumption has just always been some gold is there. No way all of it's there. I mean, we're irresponsible in every other way. Why wouldn't we be irresponsible with our more scarce assets?
Right? If I were to come out on Bitcoin Twitter this week and launch Bitcoin, right, everybody would rightly, absolutely paste me in the comments. I'd be pushed out of the community. Everyone would call me a scam.
At the end of the day, they're all thieves, right? I mean, that's why the fiat system was created. It's a theft.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Banter. I've got Tony here, and Rick, our Irishman, is back. We are excited to have him. Always love his commentary. Guys, let's jump right in. So we've got some crazy news. Elon Musk, who is never out of the news, has proposed a live video walkthrough of Fort Knox to prove that the gold is still there. I think what he means to say is to see if the gold is still there, because only time will tell. But Rick, I'm going to pass this one to you because we haven't heard from you in a bit. What do you, first of all, what do you think? Is the gold still there?
Yeah, well, listen, thanks. It's good to be back. I was hit with a savage flu. I felt like I'd been in Wuhan with Bill Gates and Fauci for a little bit, man. I was absolutely out of the game. So yeah, no, thanks. It's nice to be back. The gold issue. Yeah, wow, that's some crazy news, right? I think a lot of people have been thinking that there isn't all the gold that's meant to be in Fort Knox. You know, I've been hearing that for years. So it's quite exciting, isn't it, to actually potentially find out if it is really there. I'm in some interesting group chats, and one of the guys in this group chat decided he was going to go and quiz AI and ask, you know, what was the amount of gold in Fort Knox over the last few decades. And basically, the answer it gave him is that there's exactly 4,583 tons, and it's always been that number for the last 60 years straight. Now, I think, like, already that sounds pretty implausible, right? The next thing that was interesting that I heard someone mention was that, well, how do you audit it, right? Because I know we're talking about cameras and filming it and stuff like that, but, you know, to really verify, you probably need to test it, right? And make sure it's not some gold alloy that's mixed with some other metal. So, you know, probably quite difficult to give people like absolute confidence. You can't verify it in the way that you can verify Bitcoin, for example, right? It's very, very difficult. My guess is that there isn't that much gold in Fort Knox, or certainly not the amount that there's supposed to be. What we're going to find out next, I really don't know. But I think the takeaway for anyone is that, look, this is a great lesson in counterparty risk. If you let anybody else look after your wealth, then on a long enough timeline, eventually they steal it, right? So, you know what? I would use this as a great example for people who are maybe thinking about putting their Bitcoin into an ETF or with a custodian, right? What's to say that BlackRock is not the next Fort Knox? And they say they've got all this Bitcoin under their own control, and it's not really true. It's not really there. So I think it does two things. It shows us that Bitcoin is far better than gold because it's way easier to audit. And second of all, it shows you that you should look after it yourself, because if you let other people hold your money, they nick it, right? It's always been like that, and it will continue to be like that. So self-custody and Bitcoin, not shiny rock.
Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, man, Rick is absolutely spot on. For sure, it's going to be a great show. You know, everybody's going to be glued onto their screens, on their TVs, you know, watching this, you know, like all eyes, all eyes on Elon and the camera. I don't think the gold is there. Personally, I've never thought the gold was there. I think this was all theatrics, mostly to keep people out of even asking the question, is the gold there? Back then, you know, they would threaten to kill you, you know, if you even, you know, you remotely thought about, you know, questioning the big people, you know, behind the gold. I don't think it's going to be there. And even if it was, I'd be highly cautious of whether it's actual real gold and not like tungsten somewhere, you know, in the middle. Half of it is like in fake, whatever alloy that it's made of. It's yet to be seen, man. It's surely gonna be interesting. The fact that they managed to get a judge's approval to go in the first place, that's historic. I mean, I didn't think I'd witness the day where something like this would go down, but here we are. But again, to Rick's point, I mean, this definitely cements the point. You cannot trust somebody else with your money. That is a lie, a bullshit, a fabrication that has been proven. Like, how many more times in history do we need to see these lessons repeat themselves? Given enough time, people, money in the hands of people will go bad. It's as simple as that. So I'm really excited to see this show. By the way, I mean, I'm curious to to see how it's going to play out. But my bet is that it's definitely not there. But what's going to be more interesting is seeing if they prove that it's not there, what are the repercussions?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the implications of this are. So, if the gold isn't there, and by the gold I mean all of it, or some large majority of what we think is there, I guess I've seen a lot of people question that, like, well, what does it matter? My guess is what it really means is that the United States has no fallback plan on the dollar, and so if the dollar continues its descent into nothingness, what what happens? Like we don't have. I mean, we've got some confiscated Bitcoin, but we don't have a strategic reserve. I guess we don't have a sovereign wealth fund, which I don't like the idea of anyway. But now we don't have the gold, which is what from my understanding, China and Russia have been stocking up on. I'd be curious though if we find out this sort of news later than the powers that be, and I wonder if some of the exodus of gold from London that we talked about a week or so ago, if any of that is the government or large institutions maybe trying to cover and reclaim some of that gold in advance of an audit or something like that. I don't know, but I mean, the gold market, it's not something I follow closely. Uh, my assumption has just always been some gold is there. No way all of it's there. I mean, we're irresponsible in every other way. Why wouldn't we be irresponsible with our more scarce assets? So yeah, time will tell, but I mean, fireworks are expected, I think. So,
We should
all
check on Peter Schiff in case they don't find the gold.
Yeah, I would love to hear his reaction to. I think they should. I think he should do a live stream of him watching the live stream
Yeah.
of the gold audit, and we should see. Hopefully, he manages through something like that. All righty, let's jump into our next bit of news. So we've got Argentinian President Javier Milei. So he had this scandal with this Libra crypto. So I think I'd heard of Libra. I know nothing about it. But basically, my understanding is basically he shared about it on social media, kind of indicated to people that this was like a legitimate project or something, led investors astray. I don't know what the laws are in Argentina, but in the United States, you get in big trouble for marketing unregistered securities in this way. And the market cap just got wiped out. It's the same pump and dump as every other Trump coin or any other cryptocurrency. Um, Tony, why don't you take this one first? Before you do, though, I want to make one comment. I saw, and I won't name names. I saw someone share. On X, someone who's relatively well followed and influential in the Bitcoin space, and they said, "Hey, I own it. I apologize for simping for Javier Milei. He is," and then he said, "He is nothing like Donald Trump or Nayib Bukele." And I thought, dude, like, I'm just waiting for 6 months or a year or 2 years from now when he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry for simping for Bukele or Trump. I shouldn't have done that, but he's nothing like this new guy. He's nothing like Michael Saylor or the new guy that I'm simping for." So I don't know, Tony, why don't you take this one first?
This is another great Hollywood movie, man. That we're watching right now. This just goes to prove that all of these politicians, like almost all of them, they're all full of shit. All of them. You can't trust or believe any of them. You can't have any of them as heroes. They all say what you want to hear for a little while, and then they go completely in the opposite direction. He's trying to save face now, saying that he didn't promote it. But when you share this coin with a message that hurry up, there's not enough time to do so. Like, what are you really doing? Is that like another way of promoting it without really promoting it? I'm not really sure. But now they're coming after him. So are they going to impeach him? If that happens, well, that may set a precedent. And well, if that takes place, will history repeat itself in the US? Like, will they go after, President Trump, for example, because, he essentially pulled the same thing, right? Um, how will that play out? But again, it comes down to fundamentals. When you put the power of money, given a long enough time frame with any human being, it goes bad. Human beings are corruptible beings. There's no exception to the rule. Or maybe there is, but it's like a miraculous one, like 1 in a billion. So everybody's praising Nayib Bukele for now, and so far he's been stellar, no doubt. Other maybe than that gray zone with that IMF loan. But beyond that, he hasn't done any meme coin pump and dumps. He hasn't participated in any of these shitcoin scams. But whether that, sustains for, the term that he's, as president, this is yet to be seen. But as far as Milei goes, if you're going to use his words against him, afuera, that applies to him now.
Yeah, my mental relationship with politicians is such that I'm by default skeptical, and I'm willing to appreciate any good that they might do. Like, I think, these DOGE audits, do I think they're going to have like a material impact on the U.S. budget deficit? No. Do I trust the integrity of Elon Musk and Donald Trump? No. Could we see some good come from it? Yes. And I think the problem is it's so easy to get excited about a guy who, practices Austrian economics or whatever because he feels like he's one of you. But at the end of the day, he's still a politician. I mean, he wants re-election, he wants power, he wants a lot of things. And it's just, your warning to, avoid heroes is a prudent one, and one that I think people just so easily miss because they want to get caught up in the excitement of maybe this time it's different and maybe this is the guy. And the answer is separation of money and state, not a guy. Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, so, oh man, what a crazy story. Like, I started reading into this a little bit to try and make sense of actually what happened. And I've already spent too much time trying to figure out like what is the nonsense behind these shitcoins, right? Because it's always just another variation on the theme of financial fraud, and there's nothing different here. I did discover a couple of interesting things. I don't know, these would be worth verifying, right? But this is just the stuff I've stumbled across. But apparently there are links between the addresses that helped launch the Melania coin are linked to the same addresses that then sniped the Melania coin and then went on to go and fund the sort of founders of this new Libra coin, right? So what's clear to me is that there's a group of insiders here, a group of scammers, essentially, that are, either courting politicians or working with them to basically perform the most heinous, the most unbridled pump and dump scams. There's not even any sort of real sort of skill or nuance in the scam. It's just totally egregious. It's like a smash and grab in a grocery store, right? They're in, they're out, they take all the money and everyone gets wrecked. But look, I think the most interesting thing that you guys bring up is just like, how do we get this message across, right? That you cannot trust politicians. You shouldn't have any heroes. Like, look, I've thought this for over a decade, right? I've been wearing a tinfoil hat for a long time, but I cannot get my head around the fact that anybody would have a favorite politician. How have they not yet figured out that these people are not on your team? Even if your favorite politician is in power now and they say some things that, appeal to you or make sense to you, you can't trust them. They are here to rip you off. Look, I'll say this, right? So look, Biden and everyone in the US were completely corrupt, crazy lunatics, starting wars all over the world, creating an utter mess. And on balance, the sort of things that Donald Trump says, they make a bit more sense to me, right? I would largely agree with more of his policies than the Democrats. But at the same time, I can't let anybody off the hook, right? If I were to come out on Bitcoin Twitter this week and launch Rick Coin, right? Everybody would rightly, absolutely paste me in the comments. I'd be pushed out of the community. Everyone would call me a scammer. So why do we let Donald Trump and Melania Trump off the hook for launching this shit? We shouldn't, right? And you mentioned Saylor as well. I think the same thing is true there. A couple of months ago, he's calling us, paranoid anarchists and things like this. Even, look, let's go right back into the day, right? So you mentioned Nayib Bukele has been on the level and definitely outperformed these guys. And some people might credit Max Kaiser for directing and steering Nayib Bukele in the right direction there. But listen, a lot of people weren't around. Like Max Kaiser launched a shitcoin too. It was called Maxcoin. And a lot of people weren't around then, so they don't remember. But hey, listen, Pepperidge Farm remembers. So the only point I'm trying to make, I'm not trying to attack any of these individual people. I'm really not particularly interested in what they're up to. But what I'm trying to do is demonstrate to you that, if you put your faith in other people to guide you in the right direction, that's probably a mistake. The person you can trust the most is yourself to look after your own interests. And we always come full circle to this same point, which is, don't get drawn in by these fake heroes, right? Like go and do your own thing, go and buy Bitcoin, put it into self-custody, because if you outsource your trust like this, you are going to get ripped off. You can't trust the politicians. They are not on your team.
The thing is, when you get to this level, when you have presidents doing scams like this, it just blows up all the credibility behind the money itself, right? If you have presidents of countries, big nations that are pulling these pump and dumps, what does that tell you about the money? It's at the end of its line, right? Like this is when everything falls apart, is when you've got this Wild West jungle type of activities with zero control or zero logic behind it. So, for me, this is extremely bullish on Bitcoin, but extremely bearish on the majority of the folks who aren't in Bitcoin or who aren't even giving Bitcoin like a time of day, right? Those are those that I'm worried about because, whether they believe it or not, the results of a financial collapse is going to hit them either way.
It's crazy, man. We're quickly heading into a future where on one side, everybody on Bitcoin Twitter is laughing and mocking the fact that Fort Knox doesn't have any gold in it, right? And then the very next day, if the US announced a strategic Bitcoin reserve, they're all going to celebrate. And I'm like, they stole all the strategic gold. And now you're excited about them buying strategic Bitcoin with money that they stole from you. Like, make it make sense. Like, look, I'm going to say this. Is that the same goes for people like Andrew Tate. People now glorifying Andrew Tate. He drops shitcoins on people like it's going out of fashion. These people, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Andrew Tate, people need to get it through their heads. They are not here to dismantle the matrix. They're part of the matrix. And if you simp for these people, I can only assume that you didn't have a strong father figure in your life, right? Because why do you need to go and find these external people to tell you how the world works? You need to do your own thing. You need to develop some agency. You need to become self-sovereign because these people will bend you over and extract as much value out of you that they possibly can. It's wild.
Yeah, it's, Rick, you hit on something I think is important. And we talk about this, but it's like the tribalist nature of things. It's like because people align themselves, for example, with Trump because of the SBR or, certain policies that they, opinions that they share. Like they've dug their heels in on Trump. Like I was talking with a friend. I was texting with a friend last night and we were just kind of bantering on a particular subject that doesn't really matter here. And they said something, they remember me as like this Republican conservative. Like that's kind of their view of me. And they said something about, well, yeah, but the Republicans also support blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, like I don't care anymore. Like that's 5 years ago. I would have defended that. But now I'm just like, yeah, my point is they're all wrong. Like, why are we trusting any of these politicians? And so again, I want to, give credit where credit's due. If there are politicians who are doing good things, even if they're also doing bad things, I appreciate the good things. But on the net, I mean, just the fallacy that your guy, your team, your tribe is out there to protect you, care for you, whatever. It's silly. I don't, I think it's just time for people to wake up. But I understand it's human psychology. I mean, they feed into it very effectively. So, alrighty, guys, let's jump into the last topic here. We've got one more. Ethiopia's top central banker spotted with a Bitcoin book in his background. Pete Rizzo says change is coming. That book is a good one. It's Lynn Alden's Broken Money, which is hilarious that a central banker is reading Broken Money, or maybe he just bought it as a decorative item. But I hope he reads it. And I'll tell you my thought on this is, because I saw a couple of people come out and they're like, Ethiopia's contribution to global GDP is like 0.001, whatever. It's really low. But this to me is like, let's assume that there's something that he's gleaning from this book, and maybe the wheels are turning. He's interested in Bitcoin or whatever. I think this is how it happens, though, right? Like, presumably the United States does have some gold still. We also have the global reserve currency, and we don't, quote unquote, need Bitcoin the way that a country like Salvador, for example, might need Bitcoin, or Ethiopia. And so I think I still feel like we're a ways off on like the EU or the United States really doing something meaningful with Bitcoin. Not that I want it anyway, but my bet is this is how these are some of the news stories we're going to see more over the next few years, that these smaller countries who are really materially impacted by the devaluation of the dollar and the endless money printing. We're going to see more of this stuff. Curious to hear your thoughts, Rick.
Yeah, I think it's always, like most people say, it's inevitable, right? If Bitcoin is the truth, it's completely logical how it works. You can only resist it for so long, and on a long enough timeline, it's going to become accepted by everybody, right? Everyone will figure it out eventually. I think what I find maybe interesting is that this idea, we rail on politicians regularly on Bitcoin Twitter, right? Like, haha, they don't understand Bitcoin. How could they be such morons? What absolute idiots. And I'm just not completely sure I believe this idea that all these politicians don't understand Bitcoin, right? It's 16 years old now. Like, I can't believe that they haven't researched this. I can't believe, they print money. They can afford the brightest minds. They can pay for experts to come in and explain things to them. Like, I think Gavin went to speak to the FBI like 15 years ago or something, right, about Bitcoin. So the idea that the powers that be don't understand it, I find a little bit far-fetched. I think the reason they sound like they don't understand it is because they desperately don't want everyone else to quickly figure it out as well. They can't come out and condone it. They can't come out and promote it. So I think they kind of play dumb a little bit on purpose, and they say stupid things to dissuade people from looking at it in more depth. But I reckon they're all in the background, buying it hand over fist, trying to get their hands on it, trying to launch meme coins and build their stack that way. Like, these guys are experts in value extraction, and I cannot believe that they've missed this. So yeah, it doesn't really surprise me. I reckon he's probably got a whole heap of books about Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. But I think you're probably right. Like, I don't think all these people are stupid. Like, I don't think Jamie Dimon doesn't understand this. That said, I think there are probably a lot of politicians. Like, I think a lot of economists probably in particular understand, because they've probably studied the gold standard at some point. And, some of the pieces maybe come together, but you have more power when you have a money printer, right? But my other comment on this, you have to remember that, like, at least in the United States, I don't know how it is like in Parliament, but like in the US, most of our politicians are lawyers. Like, they have no fundamental understanding of economics. And I think like Elizabeth Warren, for example, who obviously is very hateful toward Bitcoin, probably understands enough to know it's another form of money and we can't really stop it or print it or control it, which is very helpful to many of her causes. So I think there's probably a mix, but I agree with you. Like, someone in this position probably has some grasp of Bitcoin and recognizes why people buy real estate, why people buy gold, why people buy Bitcoin, right? Scarcity. So yeah, it's they're just they're trying to build their stack. I think I agree with you as long as they can and front run as many people before we get to them. So Tony, what do you think?
Well, man, the fact that he has this book sitting on his shelf, like you said, doesn't mean he actually read it. This guy, it reminds me of the story. One of my dad's partners, he used to go out and buy all these big fancy books and have them all on his shelves. He had like a collection of maybe like 40 books. He hasn't read a single one of them, but it looks good. You know, when people walk into his office, it makes him look smart and prestigious. But if you ask him about any of these books, he knows absolutely zero. So maybe this guy read it, maybe he didn't read it. Who knows? Who cares, right? But the point is, there is no need to sugarcoat anything. All these politicians, at the end of the day, they're all thieves, right? I mean, that's why the fiat system was created. It's a theft. It's a tool of theft. So what they understand is that they have a new competitor now that they can't take out. That is what they understand across the board. There's no doubt in my mind. And that is what they don't like. And so all of this bullshit that they try to do is to put an end, or at least try to stop this competitor from gaining more ground. But unfortunately, this time around, this competitor is unstoppable in the same way that the wind will always continue to blow, right? Peer-to-peer electronic cash. You can't stop this. So that's why I've always mocked this whole conversations about people pursuing regulation and all that stuff, as if these people are required to remain relevant for this to succeed. That stupidity is what's keeping Bitcoin from, getting to where it's supposed to go much quicker, because people are still waiting around for permission from the same crooks, the same corrupt people that brought their life to the living hell that it is now. That is what's going on. But I think after 16 years, the things have progressed so fast, or at least much faster than anyone anticipated, that all these meaningless attempts, with all the resources that they threw at it, blew up. And so this is where we start, going into, if you can't beat them, join them narrative. And I don't think they will adopt it the way a lot of Bitcoiners hope. In fact, a lot of the messaging in the community from Bitcoiners is about number go up. So it just goes to show that these people also don't understand anything, or are in this for the wrong reason. Ultimately, given a long enough time frame, none of these people matter. Bitcoin's fundamentals will win. Peer-to-peer technology that no one can stop. That is the revolution. Bitcoin in full self-custody. Putting your money on an exchange, it's going to blow up in your face. Using a third-party custodian to somehow protect your money, it's going to blow up in your face. Just because you haven't experienced it yet doesn't mean you never will, right? I come from a world where I was only dealing with 5-star reputable institutions of the highest caliber. I woke up one day, all of these thieves stole everybody's funds. So if you think you're living in a penthouse in Beverly Hills or God knows where, thinking you're immune to this, you are crazy, my friend, because your turn is not only coming, but it's coming much faster than you possibly think. So money in ETF, waste of time. Third-party custodians, waste of time. The only thing that matters is in Bitcoin in full self-custody. If you're not doing this, you own absolutely nothing. You have changed absolutely nothing about your life. There's no different than leaving your money in a bank, except now you're doing an even more moronic decision of using Bitcoin with somebody else, the world's scarcest asset. Now you're leaving it in the hands of somebody else, where you have to ask permission, and you're playing by the rules that they can possibly change on you. It's complete lunacy. So who cares about these politicians? Who cares about the system? Bitcoin was created to put an end to it, to format the corruption once and for all. We're seeing this happen. If they adopt it, they just make that process faster. If they don't, it's still going to happen.
Well said. For everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Go to the bitcoinway.com/podcast. We would love to help you with proper 100% Bitcoin self-custody. We also help with online privacy, setting up privacy phones, Plan B residencies. We've got everything you need for a self-sovereign lifestyle. Again, that's the bitcoinway.com/podcast. Gentlemen, great chatting. Rick, good to have you back, brother. And Tony, good speaking with you as always.
Thank you, guys.
Guys.
Cheers, guys.